Have you ever trained a Pokémon specifically to take on the Battle Frontier in Pokémon Emerald or the Battle Maison in Pokémon X and Y? Or maybe to use it in competitive battles? Well, what if we started doing that kind of training right from the beginning of the game? And what if we combine that idea with the rules of a Professor Oak challenge? Sounds insane, right? Okay then, let's do it! Welcome trainers, SergiBit here. In this challenge, our goal is to catch or breed as many Pokémon as possible before we can no longer progress without earning the next gym badge, this time in Pokémon Black. The concept is inspired by the Professor Oak challenge we've done before in this channel, but with a twist. Pokémon don't need to be fully evolved to advance. Instead, they must be trained competitively, following Smogon's competitive sets for each Pokémon of the Unova region. Some Pokémon have multiple sets listed on Smogon, while others only have one. I will always choose the easiest set to complete, given the resources available at that stage of the game. To proceed to the next gym badge, each Pokémon caught or breed must have the correct EVs, nature and ability, as defined by its Smogon set. However, the following are not required to progress past a gym badge and may be completed at any time: Movesets, held items, and evolutions. Before we jump into it, let's quickly go over the rules of the challenge. Feel free to skip ahead if you just want to see the action. As usual, we need an original copy of the game, but we'll be using both Citra emulator and a 3DS to move the playthrough forward. Also, more than 90% of the challenge was made without speed boosters. I did use it a bit in the last part though. As always, I don't like cheating or lying to my viewers. To check the EVs and hidden power types, I'll be using the PK-Hex software on the PC and PKSM on the 3DS. I will not use it to cheat though, where's the fun in that? Now, sometimes progression in this challenge can become impossible without a few exceptions. Many mandatory battles, like rival fights or scripted encounters, give incorrect EVs for the Pokémon we currently have available. By this point, your team might already be fully EV trained, and you might not have access to new Pokémon to grab those EVs. In these cases, I will allow myself to use other caught Pokémon, including duplicates or previously EV trained ones, to get through those fights. These will be tracked separately throughout the run as exception battles. There are a few other exceptions we'll need to keep in mind to make the challenge actually finishable. We'll only be training Pokémon native to the Unova region. Elite 4 battles and rotation battles don't count, so we can complete them however and whenever we want. If the wild Pokémon available do not provide the EVs yields needed, we'll wait until the correct ones become available. This is something that will happen mostly on the first stages of the game. Hidden power typings must match Smogon sets. Since getting the right one early in the game can be extremely tedious, the first Pokémon that require a hidden power typing will be allowed to wait until breeding becomes available. If a set requires an egg move, we'll also wait until breeding and the necessary move become available. If an egg move only exists through a Dream World Pokémon, we'll wait until Dream World access is unlocked after the first batch. We'll be ignoring specific IVs spreads listed in Smogon sets. If every set for a Pokémon requires special IVs spreads, that Pokémon will be considered untrainable, and it will not count towards our main goal. Similarly, if a Pokémon's hidden ability or certain moves are only available in Black 2 or White 2, it will also be considered untrainable. All of those Pokémon will be listed separately at the end of the run. I will not be explaining the reasons one by one. Feel free to check Smogon and see the reason why the Pokémon is not trainable. When the challenge is complete, we'll have a final count of completed Pokémon, untrainable Pokémon, and exception battles, plus one more secret category. So, with all that cleared up, let's begin this adventure. The first quest was to choose which starter was better for all this madness. Since we needed to battle both rivals in a row without a break, we needed to be sure that both EV gains were the correct ones. Choosing an Oshawott allowed us to pick up an HP EV from the Pick and a Speed EV from Snivy. By doing this, we were able to grab both EVs safely. The problem was that we could not know the nature of our starter until the end of both battles. This made this first battle very tedious. After 11 attempts, we finally got our Adamant Oshawott. Amazing start, I was already tired. Next, Mom gave us the extra transceiver. We met Professor Juniper, who handed us the Pokédex and also a map from Mom. Finally, the professor introduced us to a catching tutorial and gave us some Pokéballs. With that, we proceeded to catch 2 Pokémon available on this route. We caught in our first try an Adamant Patrat. but this was the first Pokémon that, according to the rules, we will not be able to train. He will have some use later though. Let's start counting the untrainable Pokémon and see how many we had to miss at the end. Our second trainable Pokémon was an Adamant Lillipup, that we got in our third try. It also needed the pickup ability. With that, we arrived at Accumula Town, where the tutorial continued and we were introduced to the antagonist of this series, Team Plasma. After that, we battled N for the first time. We had no issue since we could get his EVs without a problem. Once on Route 2, we received the running shoes. Here we could start to catch our third Pokémon, a jolly Purloin with the Unburden ability. It only took 2 tries to get the proper one. Luck was on our side once again. After clearing the route of trainers and items, we battled Bianca. Later, once in Striation City, we also battled Sharon. After getting all the items in town, we went east to the Dreamyard. This time, also in the first try, we got a timid Pansear for this build. At this point, we cannot proceed further without beating the gym leader, and the only Pokémon available to battle only could grant us attack and speed EVs. Since some builds needed other EVs, the challenge obviously cannot be completed. However, as per the rules, after we gained the available EVs, we were allowed to proceed forward. Lillipups and Patrats in the area gave us the attack EVs, and only Purloins got us the speed EVs that we needed for all 4 Pokémon. The problem was that Purloin only appeared in this area with only a 20% chance. This meant that speed EVs in this part will be the bottleneck. So every time a Purloin appeared, I switched to all 4 Pokémon so everybody got the speed EV. I did not do this with attack EVs, since what was important was to have a lot of encounters, so a lot of Purloin appeared. I hope this makes sense to you as it did to me. This process also gave us the evolution of Dewott and also Herdier. 11 was the first Pokémon to receive all the needed speed EVs, so I needed to be very careful that it no longer participated in Purloin fights. This meant that it could not be in the front row any longer. While I was training, I found my first shiny, a Purloin, and a jolly one amazingly. After some more training, we finished Dewott for now, since he cannot get any more of the HP EVs that he needed. The remaining attack EVs were saved for the gym battle, a thing that we will need to keep in mind in every section. The next Pokémon to finish his attack EVs was Herdier. Eventually, we finished the attack EVs for Purloin also. And now, it was only a matter of finding and battling Purloins over and over. Much later, we found our second shiny, a Lillipup. And much later, Pokerus, or whatever it's called. I was in shock to see this text. I did not even know how this worked, how it could be spread, etc. After reading some guides, I realized that as long as I had a Pokémon with Pokerus in the box, it would never get rid of it. In case you don't know, Pokerus doubles the EV gains from battles. I was even thinking about removing it, but I earned it with full odds, so I decided to keep it as long as I didn't lose it. The first thing you'll see me do in every section is to spread this status in every Pokémon we catch. This was a big game changer, as you can imagine. After some more training, Purloin had all the EV ready. At this point, there's more I need to explain to you. Since Pokerus doubles the EV, sometimes it will end up with odd numbers. In that case, I allow myself to wait until I can get these numbers to the number that the build required. For example, if Purloin now has 2 more battles against a Patrat, she'll gain 4 attack EVs. And that means 253 attack EVs. Since the cap is 252, I will lose an EV. We'll find ways to deal with this much later. But for now, I will allow this, since I want the numbers to be as perfect as possible when I finish every Pokémon. With that cleared, let's move on. It was time to face the gym trainers and the gym leader. It was a very easy battle. We swiftly gained our first badge, the Trio badge. As you can see, all this took 14 hours of gameplay. This is how our 4 Pokémon are doing for now. In this first section, we were unable to finish any of them completely. Also, Lady Luck was smiling at us, granting us 2 shinies and the Pokerus. We will be missing this later, believe me. With the first badge in our hands, we can use Cut in the Dreamyard and move on with the story. Once there, we found 2 Team Plasma Grunts harassing Amuna. This battle cannot be skipped, and we cannot catch any new Pokémon. That means that the EV from the battle cannot be earned by anybody. This will happen from time to time during the playthrough, and I will be tracking the number of times this happened. As per the rules, we can use other Pokémon that we have or the finished ones. In this case, I used Patra to battle them. I've called these exception battles. After that, we saved the Muna and got the Dream Mist. This allowed us to use all the Sea Gear options. One of the functions of the Sea Gear is to enter the Entralink and catch the Pokémon and items that you get from the Dream World. Since this service no longer works, I used a software called Entralink that allowed my original game to get all the benefits of the Dream World. As per the rules, I will allow myself to grab Pokémon and items unobtainable in this game. For example, we needed a Togepi to breed later with another Pokémon to get an egg move. Pokémon from the Dream World will not be trained. They will only be used for hidden abilities or egg moves, so I'm not going to abuse this software. I will only use it to complement other Pokémon builds. I hate games that lose functions, and also love the effort of the community to bring back some of these features since they were part of the game, and we wanted the full experience. With the use of the Entralink cleared, we resume catching Pokémon, starting with a female Muna and a female Audino, both needed for breeding later, since both needed an egg move. This was a good spot to get some HP EV, since Audino gave us 2 of them, doubled by the Pokerus. I also cocked a male Patrat to get the move Baton Pass, and I put him in the daycare, so it started to gain levels as soon as possible. Also, we have our first completed EV trained Pokémon, Purloin. In front of the daycare, we had to face a mandatory double battle that we considered an exception battle, since we still cannot get any new Pokémon to train. A few steps later, we faced a third exception battle against Sheret. Let me catch a new Pokémon already! In the nearby grass after the battle, we cocked a female Pidove to breed later. I also cocked a female Blitzel and a male one with the ability Lightning Rod, and the correct nature, Timmy. Both Blitzel were used later, and this was the first Pokémon that needed to have a particular hidden power in its moveset. We'll talk about this in a few minutes. With that, we had this little space inside Wellspring Cave, trying not to trigger the next battle, and start looking for an Adamant Roggenrola with the Sturdy ability, which took about 15 attempts. With him in our hands, we were able to battle the Team Plasma Grants and start earning EVs. Later, we had to find inside the cave an Adamant or Jolly Drillbur with the ability Sunrush. 21 attempts later, we found this one with the Jolly nature. Swoobat cannot be trained and will count as an obtainable. After that, we started to battle the trainers of Route 3 until we eventually arrived at Nakren City and cleared both locations of items. Eventually, we finished another Pokémon, Herdier. The next step was to arrive at the exterior part of the Pinwheel Forest. In this area, we caught a mild Temple with the Swift Swim ability that took 27 attempts, and also an Adamant Soap with the Sturdy ability that took 23 attempts. Timbur cannot be trained and will count as an obtainable. With those Pokémon in the team, I've started grinding a bit in the dark grass of Route 3, since most of the new members required similar EVs. Also, I was waiting until Pokerus spread to my team, even with non-trainable Pokémon like Swoobat, to ensure we do not run out of it. After everybody had Pokerus, I started battling the trainers in the area outside the forest, while getting all the items available. The next place to grind EVs was the dark grass of this area, thanks to the 2-attack EV from Soap and the abundance of Speed EV Pokémon. Also, it was very useful to have a nurse there to heal the team quickly. Battling Timples was a bit annoying because they had the move Supersonic though. In between training sessions, I decided to finish the remaining battles before the gym leader, so I went to battle N first outside the gym, and then the trainers inside. After that, while in the previous area, I had an encounter with a Throh. I thought this Pokémon was not available in this game. Well, I was wrong. It was in the game, but with very low odds of encountering it. At this point, I decided the rule that wrestling Pokémon can be left for later if we want, since I realized that there were a lot like Throh after some research. Keep in mind that only 3 Throh appeared while I was training all the remaining Pokémon, and neither of them was the right one. Very annoying. I found the solution a bit later though. This whole challenge was a constant puzzle to solve. With another rule explained, we trained the HP EVs needed in the same area against Audinos. Roggenrola evolved to Boldor quickly. After many hours of grinding, these were the results. We finished Drillbur, so the remaining HP EVs from Dewott, all EVs from Boulder except the ones that got battling the gym leader later, and finally the speed ones from Timple. We still cannot get any special attack and special defense EVs, so that was it for now. Next, we headed to the gym and battled gym leader Lenora, so we could earn her badge, the basic badge. Next, Team Plasma stole a skull, and we had to retrieve it inside the Pinwheel Forest. Once inside the forest, we had to apply 2 exception battles in a row, since there was no other way to catch more Pokémon. First, we had to battle against these 2 girls. Next was the first of many Team Plasma grunts. After that, we started catching new Pokémon members in this grass. First of all was a Jolly Sewaddle with the Chlorophyll ability that took 16 attempts. Next, a Jolly Venipede with the Swarm ability that took 7 attempts. And finally, an Impish Cottonee with the Prankster ability that needed 22 attempts to find. With these 3 new Pokémon, we could advance the story, battling several Team Plasma grunts and the trainers that we could in the area. This was a bit hard to do, since those 3 Pokémon were very weak. Eventually, we retrieved the stolen skull and moved on until we arrived at Castelia City. The first thing we did was to explore every part of the city, grab all the items, and battle against the trainers along the city so we could grab their EVs and experience. The only thing missing for now was the Battle Company. With that, Sewaddle evolved into Swatloon. Next, we reached Route 4 to start looking for more team members. A Jolly Darmanitan was found in the first attempt, as you can see in the video. Next was an Adamant Sandile with Intimidate in 20 attempts. Finally, a careful Scraggy with Shed Skin for breeding later, since it needed an egg move. After that, I made a decision that I should have done at the beginning of this challenge. After returning to the Dream Yard, I started collecting Muna with different natures, since if a Pokémon with a synchronized ability is in the lead spot, the chances that the encountered wild Pokémon will have the same nature as the one in the lead spot will be raised to 50%. This, as you can imagine, was a game changer. I've also started to pass the Pokerus to everyone, and these were the first batch of Muna that we've caught. Also, in the daycare, since Patrat already learned the required move, I switched him for Togepi. After that, I returned to Castelia to finish the Battle Company battles. This rewarded us with the experience share. Since every Pokémon that gets experience also gets EVs, this became very useful for the rest of the run, especially when a Pokémon was just hatched from an egg and was too weak to battle. With that, and after clearing some trainers that we'd skipped in the Pinwheel Forest, it was time to grind again. For attack and speed, the best place was still outside the forest in the dark grass. It was a great place to also grind HP EVs against Audinos. At this point, I finished catching Munas, as you can see in the footage, during some breaks from grinding. With that, we finished Sandile EVs. The Munas were quickly put to good use, and I found a careful throw with the Guts ability without much difficulty. As you can see, we could use this feature even though Muna was fainted. The next Pokémon finished was Darumaka, that still needed a special defense EVs. At this point, with the Muna team, I started to look for Pansage and a female Pampur for breeding later. In the meantime, I was also grabbing HP EV from Audinos. Eventually, we found an Adamant Pansage and also a female Pampur. Next thing to do was trading a Cottonee for Petilil. Although it had the correct nature, it needed a required hidden power, so we reserved it for later. The next finished Pokémon for now was Throw. Libani was fully EV trained and also Venipede. With that, we could advance to the next stage. First, after trying to enter the gym, we had to fight and defeat again some Team Plasma grunts. After confronting them with our companions, we returned to the gym and started facing the trainers inside. After defeating the gym leader and earning the insect badge, we've also completed Pansage fully and Cottonee, missing only the special defense EVs. We had almost 50 hours of gameplay and tons of things to do yet. Let's keep going. After the battle, we headed north towards Route 4. Bianca wanted to battle us, and after beating her, I explored a bit of Route 4 and grabbed some items. Later, we had to face Sharon. Both battles counted as exception battles, since, again, we do not have any new Pokémon to train. This generation has so many rival battles. After receiving a call from Professor Juniper, we headed north until we meet her. The next place to visit was west of Route 3. For now, we were skipping a lot of trainers to avoid more exception battles. Once in the desert resort, we started hunting for Pokémon. With a bit of patience, we caught a male modest Sigilyph with Magic Guard after 10 attempts, an Adamant Crustle with Sturdy with only 2 attempts, and inside the Relic Castle, a sassy Yamask on our first try. Also, I caught the female Maractus for breeding later. Inside the castle, we also received the Cover Fossil. With all that, we headed north again to reach the next city, trying hard to avoid any trainer battles for now. Once we arrived at Nimbasa City, we had to face 2 Team Plasma Grunts. After defeating them, not only did we receive a bike, but also the ability to start breeding in the daycare. After exploring the city, we headed to Route 5 first to catch more Pokémon, only to realize that Tradish, Emolga, Chinchino, and Gothita cannot be trained and will be counted as untrainable. This is the only place with that many non-trainable Pokémon. Very odd. After that, I returned all the way to Necren City to revive our fossil. After 8 resets, we got our Jolly Tirtuga. With all the Pokémon caught, it was time to start breeding. There was tons of work to do, and we stayed stuck in this route for quite a while. Thank God for the bike. Pokémon that needed a certain hidden power were by far the most tedious to breed. For example, this Blitzel took 47 eggs to receive the correct one with Hidden Power Grass. I learned more with time how Hidden Power works when breeding Pokémon, but these first ones took ages to receive the correct ones. Since the daycare cost money, and I needed to pass Pokerus to several Pokémon, I decided to return to previous routes to battle some trainers. Also, believe me that I needed a bit of a break from breeding. After that, I used the Entralink software to receive a Cagnia for breeding, since we needed some egg moves. Much later, after 10 eggs, I bred the correct Muna with the Baton Pass move from Patrat. Thankfully, Audino only took 2 eggs. We bred it with Togepi, so he could have the Wish move. The next Pokémon was an Adamant Maractus with the move Spikes, an egg move from Cagnia. We received the correct one on the first try, but luck disappeared breeding a Petilil with Hidden Power Fire, which needed 30 more eggs hatch until the correct one showed up. Finally, I bred a Pidove with our male Sigilyph, so it hatched with Hypnosis. It only took 7 eggs. Nice! With breeding done for now, we had to train 11 new Pokémon and finish 6 more. We finally had every type of EV available to get. Before starting, since some of our Pokémon were at level 1, I decided to beat the Route 5 and story-related trainers first. Before facing N, I grabbed all the items from Nimbasa, like HM Strength and the Macho Brace, which doubles the amount of EV gain. And yes, it adds up to the benefits of Pokerus. I'm not going to mention it, but it will be part of our strategy from now until the end of the journey, like the experience share and the Pokerus. With that, we moved forward on the story. Rode the Ferris wheel with N? Whoops, wrong game. Anyway, after the battle, I decided to beat the gym trainers. At this point, I sent my save file to my 3DS, so there is no footage of the grinding. Attack and Speed EVs were mostly trained in the dark grass outside the Pinwheel Forest, defense inside the forest, HP against Audinos as usual, a special defense against Gothitas in Route 5, and special attack in the Desert Resort against Maractus and Sigilyph. Special attack was very tedious to train since every time we had to trigger the animation from the Sandstorm, and these 2 Pokémon had very low odds of appearing. After many hours of training, here are the results. We finished Darumaka, Dwebel, Tranquil, Tirtuga, Zebstrika, Pansear, Palpitoad, Petilil, Cottonee, Throh, Audino, Muna, Sigilyph, and Cofagrigus. Maractus was finished after we beat gym leader Elessa. After defeating her, we received the Volt Badge. We just passed the 80-hour mark. Let's keep going. First things first, a new rival battle against Sheren. After defeating him, we had to face another mandatory battle. Both were counted as an exception battle since, again, we did not have any new Pokémon to train. After that, we could move forward to the Drift Veil Bridge. There, we looked for a timid Ducklet on our first try. I also had to catch a male one for breeding later. After we arrived at Drift Veil City and explored it fully, we headed to the outside part of the cold storage to look for a modest Banigite with a particular hidden power. Using Muna and a lot of patience, we found it after 26 attempts. Northwest of the city, on Route 6, we caught a sassy Fungus with Effexpor on our first try. Also, a jolly Deerling with Sap-Zipper that took 12 attempts to find. Finally, I caught a female Carablast for breeding later. The next step was to return all the way to the daycare. This was a long trek, since we did not have the HM Fly yet. Once we arrived, we had to breed our Carablast with Benipede, so it learned Pursuit. Basculin was another Pokémon not trainable in this part, even though we were able to obtain him via in-trade game. It will count as an untrainable. The next step, as usual, was to spread Pokerus to all of our new members and return to the Driftveil city. This story continued inside the cold storage, but before that, I beat the trainers from the outside. After that, it was time to clear up the storage of trainers and also many Team Plasma grunts. Finally, the bad guys were beaten once again. With the story events done, I decided to move forward toward Route 6, beating all the trainers until we arrived at the point where we were unable to move forward. After a new scene with Team Plasma and our allies, I started to beat all the gym trainers. With that done, it was time to grind again. Now, we have a new way to train Special Attack against Vanillite. A Special Defense was still trained on Route 5 against Gothittas. This was a very tedious EV to train in the whole game, actually, since there was a big lack of Pokémon that yielded this EV. Speed was also trained on Route 5, using the dark grass of the area. Finally, I earned attack EVs on this dark grass from Route 6, since there was a place to heal nearby. HP was earned from Audinos as usual. With that, we finished Vanillite, Swanna, Fungus, Carrablast, and Deerling, missing only the EVs from the gym battle. Time to battle Gym Leader Clay. After defeating him, we earned the 5th badge, the Quake badge. As usual at this point, we had to battle one of our rivals and count it as an exception battle, this time against Bianca. Once defeated, she rewarded us with HM2 Fly. Finally! Also, Clay opened up Chargestone Cave so we could move forward. After meeting N once again, it was time for more catching. First, I cocked a male and a female Joltik, both with the team in nature, and breed them until we got one with the hidden power eyes, at the 5th tech. Next, we cocked a female Careful Ferroseed and breed it with Cacnea. On the first try, we got a sassy Ferroseed with Leech Seed and Spikes in its arsenal. Finally, after tons of searching, we cocked an Adamantinamo on our second attempt. Later, we received the lucky egg from Professor Juniper, which became very useful later in the playthrough. At this stage, we passed the 100-hour mark. With that, it was time to move forward inside the cave, battling and spreading Pokerus since we had some very weak Pokémon. Here, we'll start to find trainers with Pokémon that yielded 2 different EVs, like this hiker on the screen. We had to avoid them for now, and this became more common as the game advanced. Once deeper in the cave, we had to battle more Team Plasma grunts. They were hard to beat since our Pokémon were still very weak, and eventually I had to stop and train them a bit. At the end of the cave, we had to face N, and sadly this also counts as an exception battle, because we had no Pokémon to grab the proper EV from his Boldor. Clink cannot be completed in this game, so it counted as an untrainable. Finally, we were out of this cave. It may not look like it in the footage, but I spent a lot of time here. Here we are at Mistralton City, where we received an update for our Pokédex, and we were pointed towards Route 7 first. On this route, we cocked an Adamant Kupchu on our first try. Also, we kept battling trainers and gained levels. I must say that Ferroseed was very lethal even though the level differences of its rivals. Eventually, we arrived at the Celestial Tower, where we could catch more Pokémon, grab more items, and battle some trainers. We arrived at the top first to move along with the story. After becoming bell ringers for a second, it was time to do more catching, starting with a modest LGM with telepathy on our first attempt. Next was a modest Litwick with the Flash Fire ability. This little guy took 7 attempts. With all the catching done, we advanced as much as we could on Route 7, battling and grabbing items until we arrived at this point. At this point, I decided to battle the gym trainers because my Pokémon were struggling to beat wild encounters, and grinding was a bit tedious from fainting a lot. With that, it was time to EV train again. This was our new spot for training a special attack and the best in all Unova. Both Pokémon that spawned delivered the proper EV, and we also had a nurse on our side, very convenient. Attack EV was yielded in this area since the dark grass and the house nearby were a nice place to grind. HP, as usual, was gained against Audinos in the cold storage grass. Speed and special defense in the dark grass from Route 5, as always. Finally, defense EV was earned in the dark grass on the inside of Pinwheel Forest. All this training finished Electric, Joltik, Beartic minus the gym leader EVs, Litwick, LGM, and Ferroseed. Next, we battled gym leader Skyla, who was quickly dispatched by Beartic and earned the Jet Badge. After talking with N about the legendary Pokémon, it was time to head to Twist Mountain. Before we enter, we had to battle Sharon and add another exception battle to the list. After the battle ended, Alder rewarded us with HM3 Surf, and yes, it was time to backtrack a lot and start catching new Pokémon. For now, without doing any battling or exploring, we arrive at Route 17 to catch a modest Freelish with the Water Absorb ability, and a careful Alomomola with Healer, both of them on the first attempt. Later, inside the Mistralton cave, we cocked a Jolly Axu with Maw Breaker in 6 attempts. With our new team, we could start fighting trainers with Boldor since Alomomola and Axew both needed those EVs. This was very important because this one that you are seeing was mandatory to advance inside the Twist Mountain. Before that, we cleared the Mistralton cave of trainers and items for a reason, to catch our first legendary. Cobalion took many attempts, since it sometimes defeated us, and I also did not know that using the Moon strategy also worked with legendaries. With that, after 31 battles, we cocked a Jolly one. Next, we went to the Rumination field and did the same against Virizion. Using Muna, it only took 7 attempts to find and catch a Jolly one. With both legendaries on our side, we returned to Route 17 and 18. These routes were filled with trainers and items. We cleared all of them to train, so we could level our very weak Freelish. Eventually, on Route 18, we arrive at this house where we received the egg. We have to save before hatching it and check what we've got. It was very tedious, as you can imagine. Once we got a female Larvesta on our 4th attempt, I decided to breed the correct one with a Joltik. It only took 2 eggs to receive a timid one. After that, we returned to Route 18 and cleared it once and for all. I must say that using legendaries was very fun. After also clearing Wellspring Cave, it was time to move forward inside Twist Mountain. After talking to the gym leader Clay, it was time to battle a lot and grab more items. This area was filled with trainers with Boldor, so we had to keep that in mind all the time. At the end of the cave, we confronted Team Plasma with Sharon, and finally we arrived at Isirus City. Here, we could start selling a lot of items to this ore collector. Since we've been exploring a lot, he filled out our pockets quite nicely. Also, we fully explored the city as usual. Next, we proceeded to catch a male and a female timid Shelmet. To receive the correct one, we had to encounter it many times, first using Muna and then breeding. It took almost 100 attempts to receive the correct one. At this point, I learned more about the hidden power mechanics when you breed Pokémon. I was receiving the same over and over, not realizing how it worked. I lost so much time finding this guy. It was very annoying. Anyway, we passed the 111 hour mark, and it was time to keep catching. In this grass, we hunted for more Pokémon. After some time, we got a lonely Drudigon with sheer force on our 4th attempt, and a naive Mienshao that took 3 attempts. We also cocked another one that has the Drain Punch move, and finally bred Scraggy. This got us the correct Scraggy on our first deck, very cool, especially after the Shelmet drama from before. At this point, there was only one more Pokémon to catch, a 1% Cryogonal inside the mountain. To improve the odds, I switched to winter time, so now the odds were 5%. After 4 encounters, we cocked a Calm Cryogonal with Levitate. Since we cannot move forward on the story, it was time to grind again. As we've been doing all the playthrough, first we passed Pokerus to every team member. Also, we started with Speed TV on Route 5 Darkgrass, prioritizing leveling up the recently hatched Pokémon. Let's talk about other ways to gain EVs, like hunting for wings in Driftvale Bridge. I did it off camera for a while, since encounters there were also related to speed EVs. This helped a lot when our EV total was an odd number, since they only give 1 EV no matter the other bonuses. This is how everybody had an even number, in case you were wondering. Before continuing the grind, and since it was winter, I cleared the remaining of Twist Mountain. Also, I defeated the gym trainers to grab some more experience for the weakest Pokémon. We also did the same on Route 8, until we could not move forward anymore. Look at that floor, by the way. Let's return to the grind. This time, attack EVs were gained in the Darkgrass north of Ithirus during winter time. It was by far the best place to grind multiple Pokémon, since most of them gave 2 EVs, doubled obviously by Pokerus and the Macho Brace. Another novelty was on Route 17 and 18, where battling Freelish earned us special defense EVs very abundantly. They were very low-level Pokémon to defeat and also had a place for healing nearby. Since we were here, we also grabbed the HM5 waterfall that we forgot earlier. A special attack was a Steel Bestern on the Celestial Tower, on the top floors near the nurse. HP this time was earned in the water spots of Isirus, where we could battle a Stunfisk over and over. A Stunfisk cannot be completed in this game and it was considered untrainable. The only issue was having tons of paralyzed heals, so we did not have to go back to the Poké Center all the time. Defensives were earned at the same place as usual in the Pinwheel Forest. Time to show the fruits of our grinding. We finished Virizion, Cobalion, Fracture, Mienfoo, Freelish, Drudigon, Cryogonal, Shelmet, Alomomola, Larvesta and Scraggy, with these last two only missing the Gym Leader Eevees. At 136 hours in-game time, we had to face Gym Leader Bryson. After beating him easily, we earned the Freeze Badge. With our 7 badges in our hands, the Shadow Triad pointed us and our allies toward Dragon Spiral Tower. After speaking with Professor Juniper's father, we were able to start climbing the tower. Before doing it, we added a new Pokémon to our party, an Adamant Golett, that took 6 attempts to get. Next, we headed up, grabbing all items and clearing tons of Team Plasma grunts in battle. Luckily, Golett was able to get every EV in this section. Very lucky actually. After beating these final 4 grunts in a gauntlet, thanks to a surprisingly powerful Golett, N summons the legendary Pokémon and flies to fight the Elite Four. Once outside the tower, Alder pointed us towards the Relic Castle. Again, we had to face several Team Plasma grunts, and Golett was able to grab every EV again, so no exception battle this time. At the bottom of the castle, we confronted Getsis. Professor Juniper, using the X-Transceiver, sent us to Necren City to meet several of our allies. At this point, we received the Lightstone, and Bianca pointed us towards the next city. To get there, we crossed Route 8 once again until Bianca challenged us. This battle, again, could be done using Golurk, although it took quite some tries to beat her. After the battle, we were able to cross the Tubeline Bridge and confront Getsis one more time. For now, I decided to skip all the trainers on Route 9 and also skipping the shopping mall, and head straight towards Opelucid City. Look at me trying to dodge everybody. Once at Opelucid City, we listened to a dictatorship speech and meet Iris again and Drayden, the gym leader of this city. Both of them spoke about the legendary Pokémon, and then we were free to explore the rest of the city. After that, it was time for more catching. On Route 9, we caught a female Adamant Poniard, a brave Buffalan on our second try, and a bold female Bullaby also for breeding. In the meantime, we trained Cacturne a bit so he could learn Sucker Punch, and a Ducklet until he learned Roost. With that, after breeding Ducklet with Bullaby, we received a bold one with Roost on our third tech. Next, we bred using Cacturne, and got an Adamant Poniard with Sucker Punch on the first tech. With our new team members, it was time to train a bit against all the skip trainers. First on Route 9, and then the ones we could beat inside the mall, since some of them yielded EVs that we didn't need. Here, we unlocked the ability to purchase vitamins, an expensive but also very useful use of money to speed up the progress of our Pokémon. To fill our pockets, we returned to the Ore Collector and also the chef from Route 5. With that, we detoured to Route 10 to grab items and battle the trainers that we could. We cannot advance further from here since the next home was Victory Road. With all Pokémon cooked and bred, I purchased some vitamins for the most tedious EVs. Using vitamins also meant that Pokémon will not get the experience from battles, so we needed to keep that in mind. I wanted to start grinding again. First, grabbing the HP EVs from Stunfisk. Before proceeding with the training, I decided to battle the gym trainers, and also start to remember how this puzzle works inside the gym. All the trainers there yielded attack EVs, so I decided, at the 144-hour game time mark, to finish training attack in Isirus City in the dark grass on top of the gym. While grinding, look what I found, another shiny that... ouch, never mind. Defense EVs were earned in the same spot as usual in Pinwheel Forest. This time, here was the place to get speed since Bullaby needed only a few. With that, we finished Buffalan, Poniard, Bullaby, and Golurk minus the gym leader EVs. Let's face the last gym leader from the game, Drayden. After beating him with Golurk, we received our last badge, the Legend Badge. Once out of the gym, we received the Master Ball from Professor Juniper that we would put to good use soon. We could now start hunting for the roaming Pokémon of the game, Tornados. The problem is that its nature was given as soon as we entered this house, so we had to save before that. Watch this scene, find the place where it was raining and catch Tornados. We had to do that a total of 11 times. I think that was reason enough to use the recently acquired Master Ball. Here it is, a very powerful legendary. With that, it was time to battle Sheren. there was a build for tornadoes that allowed us to beat Sharon and get the proper EVs, but since it was very tedious to catch him, I decided to count it as an exception battle. This was finally the last rival battle. Route 10 had tons of trainers that we had to skip, this time because there were no more Pokémon to grab the EVs. We were almost at the end, guys. Let's go to the victory road, but first we had to show all the badges. Inside Victory Road, we had more catching to do. With 2 attempts, we caught the Jolly Duran with the Hustle ability, and on our first try, a modest Dino. Once those 2 were on our team, it was time to go deep into the cave. There were tons of items to grab and lots of trainers. We did not have to do any exception battle against the mandatory ones, which was great news. Eventually, after a long trek, we arrived at the Pokémon League. After that, I spent all the rare candies, so D would learn Hydro Pump. Also, we finally let him evolve into Samurott. All this was because this move was needed for Pampur. First, we bred a timid female one, which took 7 eggs. Then, we bred him with Samurott to receive this little fella with 9 eggs hatch. It also needed a hidden power grass, so that wasn't too bad. This was the last Pokémon that we had to breed. With that, it was time to catch the 3rd member of the Source of Justice, Terrakion, waiting for us inside Victory Road. After only 2 attempts, we caught the Jolly one. We had to spend a lot of Pokémon though. He would not stay inside. The remaining Pokémon here, Hitmore, cannot be completed in this game and was considered untrainable. With that, time to grind again. We'll be using the same old places. I started with Speed on the dark grass of Route 5, but if there was only 1 Pokémon left, it was faster to do it against Basculin. Attack EV was trained again in Isirus City, and special attack on the top floors of Celestial Tower. These were the results. We finished Terrakion, Duran, Pampur, Deino, and Tornadoes. As per the rules, the Elite 4 battles were not counted in the challenge. How amazing it was not having to think about EVs, just pure battle. This is the team I used for these battles. Golurk, Samurott, Drudigon, Tornadus, Buffalan, and Virizion. With that, let's defeat them once and for all. I'm not going to get into the details of the battles. Shontal was practically defeated using Golurk, with just some assistance from the others. Grimsley was defeated by Virizion alone. Caitlyn needed the effort of all the team, but we beat her no problem. Finally, Marshall was the hardest, but with all the team and the effort of Samurott, we won. With that, Team Plasma Slayer appeared, and after some discussion with N, who had beaten Alder, it was time to enter inside the belly of the beast. Once there, we confronted the sages with the help of all the gym leaders. Very cool scene. After exploring the castle, it was time to battle N. Here's the problem. We needed to catch Reshiram first, but we were not able to see its nature until the end of the game. The problem was the mandatory save after the credits. This meant that we only had 1 chance to catch the proper one for his Smogon build. Since Reshiram was also affected by Muna's abilities, we had a 50% chance to get the correct one. Let's see what happened. Once we caught him, I let him faint. This way it did not receive any wrong EV. Next, we defeated N, and it was time for the real villain. So, time to battle Getsis. After the battle, we let N run away with his legendary Pokémon. And with that, we reached the endgame. And there it is, the correct Reshiram. Munas were by far the MVP of this World Challenge. This was the last Pokémon to EV train since Kyurem cannot be completed and was counted as untrainable. Let's tackle the post-game. First, we received the Super Rod from Lucar and later a very useful upgrade for our Pokédex, the National Dex. Before continuing, I started training Reshiram. I bought as many vitamins as I could to speed things up and train speed against Basculin on Route 1 and special attack on Celestial Tower once more. Here was the finished Pokémon. With that, we finished part 1 of this challenge, but there was still plenty to do. These are all the Pokémon we were able to train. And this is the amazing Munas box that I will never delete. Almost 160 hours of gameplay and plenty more to do. Because as we spoke in the beginning, we had to learn the proper moves and evolve many Pokémon. Let's begin. At this point, EVs are no longer a problem. So now, the Experience Share and the Lucky Egg were the protagonists. Also, we needed to grab tons of TMs necessary for completing the competitive movesets of our Pokémon. First things first, I backtracked through almost all of Unova, beating the remaining trainers and grabbing as much experience as we could. After we cleared all the previous routes and caves, it was time to start new routes, where trainers were much tougher, as you can see in the footage. We started by Route 11, beating all trainers and exploring fully for items and TMs. We did the same once we arrived at Village Bridge. Next was clearing Route 12 until we arrived at Lacunosa Town. After full exploration of this odd town, we headed towards Route 13. One trick I did was to delay evolution so Pokémon could learn some of their final moves earlier. This challenge required tons of planning from the beginning to the end, as you can see. We stopped a bit to train against Audinos on Route 12 and also on the Giant Chasm. Here was our first batch of finished Pokémon, which we also took the time to rename, since they will forever be special. If you are familiar with Gen 5, you'll know that some Pokémon take a while to evolve. After some grinding, I moved forward to the post-game. I decided to head to the new part of the Dreamyard to train and also arrest the first Sage, Gorin. This was also required to receive some very common and useful TMs. Eventually, from Route 13, we arrive at Undella Town, where we receive the last HM, Dive. We are not entering this house, by the way. If you know, you know. We spent time clearing all the trainers from the area and gained more experience. Next, we proceeded south towards Route 14 and did the same thing. Eventually, we found the second Sage, Giallo, and Luker took good care of him. Saying the Sage's names correctly is going to be a quest of its own. With that, we also cleared all the abandoned shrine area. For again, tons of items and experience to grab. Next, we arrive at Black City, the last one in the game. To keep grinding, I wanted to be able to battle the Elite Four. To do that, first we had to talk to Alder on top of the Celestial Tower. Until this point, I did not realize that Reshiram learned his last move at level 100. So yeah, we also needed to do that. He will be part of our team until the end. I tried the Elite Four and it was impossible to beat with our current levels. So I decided to buy tons of things so losing money wasn't a problem, and start battling them over and over to grab as much experience as we could. I combined this with battling high-level Audinos. After some time, we added these Pokémon to the completed ones. Sadly, two of these Pokémon were wrong. Simipour and Simisear needed Nasty Plot on their respective movesets, and I did not realize that these were egg moves, not TMs. I decided to add the move using PK Hex, but I will count them as failed Pokémon, the last category that we will count. Next, we returned to Relic Castle to grab the Earthquake move, and also arrested another Sage, Ryoku. With more training done, here's a new batch of finished Pokémon, completing one full box. Next, we entered Challenger's Cave, to train a bit more against trainers and grab more items. After that, we arrested the remaining Sages, Zinzolin inside the cold storage, Bronius inside the Chargestone Cave after beating some grunts, and Root, the last one, on Route 18, completing the Looker quest. Another way to grind was battling the trainers on the stadiums of Nimbasa. I changed the date to reset the encounters, and I found out it was a great way to earn experience. Also, we received another lucky egg from the treasure hunter of Route 14, which was very useful. Since we needed the TM for payback, we went through Route 15 to 16, battling trainers and talking to the Shadow Triad for the last time. Here are 18 more finished Pokémon. We were almost at the finish line, but we did not have many more post-game areas to grind. After many hours and failing against the Elite Four, we finished Reshiram who reached level 100 and learned his final move. I used all the remaining rare candies on him to end his training leveling quickly. There were still some more Pokémon to finish though, and still I did not win against the Elite Four, not even once. Finally, we were done, but with a bit of bad news, since I also made a mistake with Excavalier's moves and also the Mandibus ones. I corrected them with PK Hex again, but they will count as failed Pokémon. Before starting the final part of this challenge, I wanted to beat the Elite Four at least once. Finally, we were able to defeat Alder and enter the Hall of Fame. It was a matter of self-pride at this point. Here's the final time for this part. Almost 190 hours of game time. The last thing we needed for the Smogon builds were the items. I did not want to get every item for every Pokémon, because we will still be grinding at this point and forever. But at least I wanted a copy of each item. Since some Pokémon had more than one option, at least I wanted to have the opportunity to have one of them available. There were several missing at this point. I had to enter the Entraling for the last time to receive the custard berry needed for Gigalith. I had to steal a mental herb for Alomomola and to reach the mine plate inside the abyssal ruins for Volcarona. Since we've done a ton of exploring, the only missing items were the ones earned with BP in the battle subway. We needed a total of 192 BP, so it was time to use our builds and put them to good use. I tried several combinations of Pokémon in the different subway battles. The best Pokémon I used were Ferrothorn, Tornadus, Volcarona, Jellicent, and Mienshao. I combined singles and doubles, but mostly I did the latter with 4 of the 5 Pokémon mentioned in the team. With that, I bought the remaining items, finishing the challenge. What a wild ride this was! It will be a while before I try something like this again. I made plenty of mistakes, but I also learned a lot about training Pokémon. Look at the boxes. If you are here at the end of this video, you are simply amazing. After almost 214 hours of gameplay, time to move on to a new project. I hope you will join me for the next Pokémon craziness. Thank you so much for watching, I will see you in the next one, and take care.